All right, welcome back. This is another episode of LeaderShipping. This is actually episode 3 of season 2. We've covered a lot so far this season. I think since our last episode, we've had Louis DeJoy step down as the Postmaster General. UPS rebranded SurePost as Ground Saver. Tariffs everywhere. That last one, of course, is at the top of everyone's mind. No knowing like how often it's going to change or what we're ultimately going to end up with. In times of uncertainty, we got to just focus on what we control. And that's some of the things we're going to talk about in this season. We'll touch on some things today. There's a lot that you can control within your parcel operations, probably more than you even realize. And so that's why I've got someone here with me today, Adam McCoy. He's the Chief Operating Officer over at eHub. Adam, I don't know if you know this, but I've got a little surprise for you.
All right.
Here in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be sitting next to you. We're going to get to hang out.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be great.
We're going to make secret handshakes, all that type of stuff. It's going to be awesome. Talk Parcel. Adam, as I said, is the Chief Operating Officer over at eHub. He helps turn ideas into powerful, real-world solutions for parcel shippers. He works with those shippers to ensure that eHub's products align with their needs, delivers impactful solutions, improve their shipping operations. And I really want to thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy.
Well, let's get into it. So, starting off, tell me a little bit about, I guess I talked a little bit about, what eHub does and everything. Maybe you could give a better introduction because there's no way that I'm going to do justice for all the awesome things that you do.
Yeah, happy to. So eHub is really a technology platform that focuses on shipping optimization. So we have a broad product portfolio that includes both UI solutions as well as API solutions. We have a diverse partner portfolio that our customers can utilize our software or our partner software to really kind of optimize what they need. And a core tenet for us here at eHub is we want to ensure that our customers are on the right technology solution for them. And in many instances, that's utilizing one of our partners and being able to kind of really seamlessly utilize our technology with a partner technology. We find that to be a win-win. And that's kind of really the essence of how we grow our partnerships is, customer driven, customer focused. And so our broader technology platform is not only our own solutions, but partnered solutions. For example, Sifted is one of our partners and why we're here today.
That's why we're going to hang out.
Yeah.
So, obviously shipping has been moving towards, being very technology driven and managed for quite some time, and it's accelerating. It seems like, when you're putting tech stacks together, what's the first step, I guess, as far as building a tech stack for any sort of company that's doing any shipping?
Sure. The first step, and I honestly think it's the most important thing that we do, is really kind of work to understand the strategy. The goals, objectives are really critical for us determining what the appropriate technology stack looks like. So those guiding posts for us really help us understand the organization, what they're trying to do. And then as we kind of start to optimize putting the technology stack together, we can kind of go back to those strategic goals and objectives and make sure that we're staying aligned with what is really kind of the key focus for our customer. One example that I love, because it was a conversation that I was having with a large brand. We were sitting down and kind of discussing some of their strategic goals and initiatives in their fulfillment and shipping kind of functions. And when we had that conversation, there was a part of us that there was a part in that conversation that started going to multimodal or multinodal fulfillment. Hybrid fulfillment is what we refer to it here at eHub. And I was expecting the traditional, hey, we want to reduce the last mile. We want to save on shipping. But one of the key strategic initiatives for this organization was mitigating risk. They said, hey, if we only have one fulfillment center and there was a natural disaster or there was something that prevented us from fulfilling from this single location, our customers will not receive product, and that's something that we want to address. We want to make sure that as part of our strategy, we've mitigated risk. And so that was a really kind of an impactful conversation, because then that allows us to say, okay, as we're thinking about technology and we're starting to put these pieces together, how are we ensuring that we can put together a technology stack that's going to really facilitate this hybrid fulfillment model? And so having those strategy conversations, really kind of defining the objectives and goals, will be critical, because that's ultimately going to guide how we put together the technology solution.
So once you have some of those strategies like kind of lined out and everybody feels comfortable about it, what tools are out there to help execute on that type of stuff?
Yeah, so there's a lot of tools. I mean, in fact, that's probably the challenge. There's so many tools. It's trying to understand which tools are effectively best for the customer. And, I think our industry is one where we label very quickly, this is a WMS, this is a TMS, IMS, et cetera. And I think the challenge with that, when you actually really kind of dive into those solutions and you start to look at the platforms, you find out, well, this WMS has IMS functionality, it has TMS functionality. So what that conversation leads to is, well, this WMS may be similar to this WMS, but there's different strengths. And so what we really want to focus in on is not necessarily labeling like, okay, we're going to put this TMS, this WMS together, and there's your solution. It's really understanding what are the key functions within those solutions that are going to be critical for meeting those strategic objectives that we set. And so that's really critical. I mean, as an example, I mean, you can look and say, well, I want to be able to do rate shopping, and that's a key function that we're looking at. Well, rate shopping can be very complex. You can set rules that are very easy to configure in one system. Maybe in another system, they require a technical resource to configure and kind of put those rules together. And so, again, when you look at conversations about, hey, which tools should we be using, it depends. If you want to have a team member be able to kind of create and modify and update rules very quickly on the fly, well, then you may need one solution over another one that would require a little bit more technical resource in configuring those rules. So what we're focused on is not necessarily looking at a prescription of tools. What we're really focused on is looking at what are the functions that meet the objective, and then starting to understand with our broad technology partnership and our own solutions, how we can best kind of dial that in for the customer.
I think that's really important. Along with this being like the age of technology and the rapid advancement of everything that's out there, it's really easy to get overwhelmed and not know, even if you have a strategy, but you're just not experienced, you can very quickly become like a great consumer of software and really not know how to plug all of those pieces in, or you might have some redundancy in there or not get the benefits out of some of that stuff. Yeah, I mean, I could see how that gets just absolutely overwhelming out there.
Yeah, I like that when you were talking about redundancy. It's very frequent that I run into groups that they have what I refer to as a Frankenstein technology stack. And so, they had a strategy, and they put together a single kind of technology solution early on. And as their business evolved, they continue to kind of add technology solutions, add different components. And there is a lot of redundancy. There's a lot of waste. There's often, as they've kind of built that technology stack, they've had to build workarounds. And it's one that's costly, not efficient, and to your point, fairly confusing. And they kind of come back and say, okay, how do we fix this? And that's a pretty common issue that we run across with fulfillment centers. And as we kind of work to help them, we'll kind of have to dial back. hey, here's your objectives. Here's the solution that you have in place. How do we start working to simplify this technology stack?
I actually talked to a company the other day that was evaluating some different technologies, and we'd made some recommendations. They were like, "Wow, yeah, no, that's going to be super helpful." They went back, sat down, discussed internally, and came back and said, "Turns out we already have one of these things, and we didn't know about it." And these are folks that are leading, the operations team. They've been with the organization for a couple of years. That just tells you that like it could just become like so like broad that like maybe it's being used for something different, or maybe it's not being utilized at all. And until you actually like say, hey, wait a second, let's get focused and let's go after this thing over here, that you're like, oh wait, I actually have that over here. How did we not know that, right? How did we not take advantage of that? We're just paying these invoices and moving on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We run into that all the time, and we see groups that, they'll have kind of a technology solution in place, and as we kind of work through it, say, well, you actually don't even need this one, and they'll be like, really? And we're like, yeah, because in your technology stack, to your comment about redundancy, it's like you can do this in your kind of core foundation system, and you don't need this bolt on. And so we find that all the time.
We've done that as a business ourselves. We
Yeah.
went through a huge cleanup, and I'm like, why did we just buy all this stuff? Like,
Yeah.
great salespeople in the world, I guess.
Yeah.
So, like, what tools can help shippers evaluate your success and like certain strategies that they actually implement?
Sure. I kind of boil this down into kind of two areas. I think first, looking at some form of process improvement model within an organization. When you're in a fulfillment center, I think it's really important to have some form of model around how are you working to continually improve. I was recently actually at an Amazon fulfillment center, and one of the things that was the most impressive part of that and kind of tour and kind of going through their processes for me was their desire and focus around continuous improvement. I mean, they already have a ton of robotics. They have a very sophisticated fulfillment process, and one that is incredibly impressive. And you look at it and you're like, wow, this is incredible. And then you sit down and their question to themselves is, how do we get better? And I think that's incredibly motivating, at least for me and for I hope those in our industry, where we're sitting down and we're saying, okay, here's what we're doing. How do we get better? And so I would encourage everyone to have some form, as kind of your question around a tool, utilizing some process improvement model within your organization to continuously improve. I think that's going to be critical. I think the second that I really kind of think about is data and analytics. You need some form of business intelligence tool. If you've set objectives and goals, you need to be able to measure your progress towards those goals. You need to be able to see how you're performing. And so you really need to have some form of business intelligence component in that process improvement. And so I look at it as, if you have a nice model around process improvement and you have a really good way to measure that, I think you're going to find some success.
No, that's really important. And that kind of ties in with what I was saying at the beginning here, like control what you can control,
Yeah.
right? You can't change what you can't measure, and you can't measure what you can't see. So making sure that you have good line of sight into what you're doing, but also into like what that ultimate goal is that you're trying to achieve, and then revisiting it on a regular basis. I think I talked to somebody one time that kind of framed up that concept in a sandcastle, like using a sandcastle to explain it. And he said, you build a sandcastle, and then eventually, the tide comes in, the waves come in, and it's going to start eroding it away and washing it away. And so if you don't keep going back and fixing it and, keeping it up, it's eventually just going to get washed away. And I was like, wow, it's really interesting the way that you put that together. It's the same with your business. In the process, you have to keep reevaluating the goal, the processes that you're going through, and like, is it working? And don't just keep like hammering away at it if it's not working. It's okay to just say, hey, wait a second, we've got to stop because this isn't working, and reevaluate how we're trying to accomplish that goal.
Yeah, I love that. And our industry is one that is rapidly changing all the time. I mean, you just when we started here, you named some changes that were happening. I mean, DeJoy, the change at the USPS. I mean, that's going to have significant ramifications. We have new carriers coming in all the time. There's changes in services. There's just constant change. And so if you're not continually working to evolve and improve, you're falling behind. And I think that's something that is pretty clear in our industry just because of how fast change happens. And I think it's changing. And you commented to this earlier. I mean, it's changing faster and faster all the time. I mean, it's really amazing at how fast technology is changing our industry. So you definitely want to be on the forefront of that change.
Yeah, the amount of changes are like, it can easily become paralyzing because you just don't know what you need to do. And then the next day something else changes. And just when you think you've got it figured out, then something else changes and you're just like, what do I do? I just stop. I can't do anything.
Yeah.
It's interesting times, but it'll be okay. Again, staying focused on what you can control. We will be able to get through. We will be able to come up with, plans to get through these types of things. So everybody rest assured, you're more capable than what you might give yourself credit for.
Yeah.
Looking at the bigger picture, what kind of efforts can show, gaps in a shipper's tech? This kind of goes along with like reevaluating your processes on a regular basis that we're talking about.
I feel that our business and our industry is unique around a peak season. And so I think peak season creates this incredible opportunity for fulfillment centers to really stress test their business. And in that stress testing process, we're going to find out where bottlenecks exist, where issues with the software stack exist. And so I think we have, in a lot of ways, a distinct advantage in our industry because we get stress tests usually every single year in Q4. That's coming. And so I think that is just an opportunity for us to really say, okay, instead of going through peak season and saying, okay, wow, we made it through it, great, let's just keep going, business as usual. I love the thought of coming into a peak season as a mindset of stress testing and saying, okay, we're going to evaluate as we go through this peak season. We're going to document, we're going to identify the areas that were challenges for our business. And then we're going to come back after peak season because, again, from a technology stack perspective, it's not very easy to rip and replace out a technology stack in the middle of a peak season. So, you're not going to be doing that typically. And so what you're looking at then is once peak season is over, taking that learning, taking the elements that you identified in your processes, in your technology stacks, and saying, okay, here's what I want to improve. Here's my goals and objectives. And when I look at, typically sitting down with organizations and looking at strategy, I mean, you can pretty much look at 3 different areas that are, key to their kind of strategic initiatives. Something around cost savings, something around efficiency, and something around quality. And so with those 3 areas, you can kind of say, okay, through this stress test, this peak season, how did we perform cost-wise? Did we find anything that we need to go back and maybe reset on? What about our efficiency? That's a perfect time to identify efficiency issues. And then when you look at quality, again, how accurate were you in that fulfillment process? And, I think those kind of 3 focal areas give you a lot of opportunity to really come in and say, here's the changes we want to make going forward.
What kind of changes have you seen, I guess, after some of these stress tests that, people are implementing?
Yeah, I mean, we've participated in a lot. So, I mean, being a technology platform, our most common engagement is looking at their technology stack. So
Sure.
That's number one for us. But we've had a lot of opportunity as we're kind of going through that consultation process to evaluate just, pick pack processes, et cetera. So we've had organizations come and say, hey, you know what, we need some help. We're not, we think we have an efficiency issue here. We want, help addressing it. We're looking for this XYZ technology solution. But can you walk through our warehouse? Can you come in, look at this data, and maybe give us some insight on what you're thinking? So, I mean, we've had groups where we'll go through their warehouse and we'll say, hey, you know what? You have a wave picking process. Let's pull the data. Let's look and see what we're seeing here. We actually think there's an alternative approach here. And again, we're coming at it from a technology perspective.
Sure.
Our goal is to help them improve their technology stack. But again, because of the data that we have, because of the technology that we're partnered with or we have on our own technology stack, we really can kind of help them dial in some processes too that will be beneficial in the technology stack. So I would say, first and foremost, to answer your question, we're helping with technology gaps that they identify in stress testing. But we do a lot of just kind of basic process improvement with organizations as we're helping them identify the right technology.
That's really interesting. Over the years, I've worked with thousands of shippers. You've worked with thousands of shippers. Some of the things that I've helped organizations do was put together some really strong leading indicators of like when they're going to hit a failure point. So we're talking a lot about stress testing, like trying to find where that break point is.
Yeah.
Then taking that and saying, okay, what are the lead up marks that we can give ourselves enough runway to be able to address those before those issues happen, and that can be not necessarily in technology, because technology takes a little bit of time to implement. It takes time to learn. There's always that pit of despair and everything. But if I can give you enough time to make those changes, because I can pull out those trends where you're starting to repeat and head towards that failure point again, then hopefully you can take the necessary action internally to avoid that, or hopefully flatten that out or push out that failure point far enough to where it's not going to be super detrimental to your business or your operations or the holiday season, whatever it might be that you're heading towards. So
Yeah.
it's really cool to see, you all are taking it, from a, hey, once it's broken, we know that this system's broken and we need to build it back better. And then, we're taking that approach, okay, we build it back better, but you still have these potential failures out there. So like, what are those markers that are coming towards where you might hit that failure point where you need to reevaluate it?
I love that. And, one of the things that I love about the Sifted solution is really the kind of what if scenario opportunities that you guys can support customers in doing. And for me, that was one of the components as we were looking at the partnership here and looking at the technology stack. That was something that really excited me because, yeah, you're looking at some of those kind of leading indicators and looking at data to kind of help you say, hey, here's a potential problem. But it's sometimes hard to be able to kind of say, okay, well, what are the options that I have? Like, how do I kind of do these what if scenarios? And your tool for me is really impactful for customers to be able to say, okay, here's an option. Let me consider this alternative. And kind of walk through the scenario and understand what the financial impact would be, what's the impact from a time in transit, et cetera, and really kind of be able to assess, okay, how does this option stack rank up to other options? And so I think to your point, looking for those leading indicators, but then being able to have the technology to come in and say, okay, this is going to be a problem. What are the options? How can I kind of work through those scenarios to best determine what my plan of action is?
It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of really smart people over here that are building things out. But when you start working with an organization and like you get a baseline visual of how they've been operating, you pull that information into the system and start looking at it and kind of breaking it apart and like diagnosing it, coming back and having those conversations and saying, what happened around XYZ date over here? And they're like, what do you mean? Right. And they look back inside of there and then they start, oh yeah, well, we had this problem, that problem, this issue popped up, we were short staffed, whatever it might be, that. But they're like, wait, why'd you ask that? And I was like, well, let's look at some of those markers, right? It's like going to the doctor on an annual basis or something, and they do a blood test and they're like, hey, so how's your exercise been? How's your eating been and everything? And you're like, what, why are you asking that? I feel fine, doc. And they're like, well, you've got some markers over here that are saying that you're probably not doing as much as you're claiming you are.
Yeah,
It's a
exactly.
lot of fun. It's eye opening, but it like illustrates like the power of the information that companies have at their fingertips, but aren't aware of how to utilize or that they can utilize that type of stuff.
Sure. And, as we've talked about kind of the rapid change in our industry, I mean, how many times are carriers changing potential services? How many times are we seeing rate changes regularly in a year? I mean, the list goes on and it continues to multiply. And when you're dealing with that level of complexity and that level of change, you really need to be able to leverage and lean into technology to help you kind of determine where those problems are. And so I agree with you. It's incredibly exciting to kind of help people see the data, see the opportunity for improvement, and kind of, help them realize those improvement gains.
Yeah. Especially in times right now. I mean, you mentioned, how many times do things change? Like we saw what, like 3 or 4 changes announced, I think, by UPS in just the month of March alone. I mean, everything from, changing like fuel indexes to completely changing how zones are being mapped, right?
Yeah.
Like if you've put together a business plan based on how you've been operating historically and what the rules have been, and now that gets completely upended, like it can throw everything into a little bit of a frenzy. Um, I've been, one of the analogies, I'm a big analogy person, but one of the ones that I've been trying to explain to folks is how you best utilize, some of these modeling solutions and things like that is kind of similar to like an NFL head coach on the sideline, right? Like they've got this play card with all the different plays for just about every scenario that they get into. And so when they get into that scenario, like you've got a play clock, you've only got so much time to like call a play in. They don't have time to sit there and think about it, strategize, and try to come up with the perfect scenario. They just have to, take action. And the same thing for your business. If you have the ability to like look ahead, understand where your, stress points or failure points are, and what potential issues could come up based on all the events that are happening around you, you can model out and plan and say, hey, if this or that or whatever happens, then we're just going to move on to plan B or plan C or plan D or however many different plans that you have. And that helps, take you out of that, paralysis mode of being like, which way do I go? And straight into that execution mode where you
Yeah.
really just like move on and start putting, your foot down, and that's going to differentiate you from your competition. That's going to ensure success for your company and your employees. And it feels good.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I love that. When you were kind of describing that in kind of that analogy of a coach, it really is interesting because when you think about a fulfillment center, I mean, you've got staffing, you've got technology, you've got carrier partners, you've got so many aspects of levers that you're trying to kind of really kind of dial in to make sure that you're executing well. And and I think the time is a critical component to that because, again, we talked about peak season being this opportunity to help us kind of stress test. We'll find groups sometimes that they'll go through a peak season. I don't think they've really they know they have issues, right? They're coming to us
Mhm.
and talking to us about, hey, we need to make some improvements. They didn't really document or, use data well to kind of measure performance during that peak season. So then we're kind of spending a bunch of time trying to claw back what actually happened in Q4 that was kind of an issue. And then you find yourself kind of, end of Q2, possibly late into Q3, trying to figure out the solution for moving forward. And so I really think time is that critical component where, if we're kind of really proactively working through like a peak season and saying, hey, what are the things that I have to change so that when it's January, February, you are kind of like, already working to implement those changes, that's just going to dramatically improve the rest of the year for you. So, yeah, I like that analogy a lot.
Anybody that's wondering how like Christmas has crept into like August or July, that's it right there, right? Like
Yeah.
this is people that have been through it. They've seen it. They've seen those failures and everything, and they're pre-planning and moving things into position. So, when you start going to the store in, August, September or whatever, and you're seeing Christmas stuff out, you know that they've already been through the worst of it, and they're trying to get ahead of all of this stuff.
For sure. Yep.
What's your number one piece of advice for someone that's looking to add, shipping tech to their stack, or if they don't have a stack at all?
Yeah, I would go back to those goals and I would ask the fundamental question, how does this component, my technology stack, help me achieve my strategic goals and my strategic objectives? And if you can't clearly articulate the answer to that, don't implement that technology. Because again, I mentioned that Frankenstein technology stack that I've seen all too often. And I think largely that happens because as businesses continue to evolve, they'll find, they'll build workarounds, and those workarounds become costly and inefficient. And then, as you said, maybe a good salesman comes along and says, hey, I've got a solution for that issue. And so then they bolt on a component to their existing technology stack. And when you've done that over, a couple decades, that technology stack is, one, usually very costly, inefficient, and surprisingly not well understood. And so, I would go back and say, okay, for someone that has defined their strategic objectives and goals, asking themselves, how does this technology help me accomplish those goals and objectives? And if the answer to that is, somewhat vague or not clear, don't implement that technology. Start over, look for additional technologies, because I fundamentally believe, and we've seen this over and over again, you can simplify your technology stack by effectively taking in one solution, replacing three, and now you're more efficient, you're more cost effective. And so improvement in technology stack, I believe many times should be in cost reduction. You should be actually seeing a savings because of your technology, not an increase. And so if you're doing it right, I think you should be able to identify that savings.
Man, you hit everything that I was thinking right on the head. Like, why do people buy technology? It helps you do more with less, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, we wouldn't be typing away on computers and using, word processors. We'd just be out there with a printing press, just cranking away and sending out our flyers. It's got to make work more efficient.
Yep.
And, what we see from businesses is, if you're going to spend the money, it needs to help you save money, first of all. That's a huge plus. And it needs to enable you to, be more efficient or do more with less. And if it can't do one of those things or both of them, then, to your point, that's the best advice. What am I getting this for? Just because I like to spend money, I guess, maybe. I don't know. Probably don't do it.
Yeah, and
Well,
it is amazing when you think about, I've seen kind of the evolution of technology in our industry, and it really is impressive about what is available today. I mean, if you haven't gone to, a conference like Manifest or, something similar, go to a conference and you're going to be blown away with the amount of advancement in technology that this industry has today. And so, for me, it's incredibly exciting and encouraging to see what we're able to do with technology in improving fulfillment.
God, we were both at Manifest, and it's been a few years since I've been there. But I go to trade shows, but I hadn't been there in a few years, like I was saying, and it was overwhelming, mind blowing. Like, you're immediately met with like a robot that wants to take your picture. You've got drones flying around and mocked up like warehouses, like all sorts of things. You got a self-driving semi sitting right there, like, and you just walked in the door. You haven't even like gone further than 10 feet in. It was eye opening just to see, because we work in the industry, we know this type of stuff exists, but to see it there and on display and like, a close proximity and everything, you're like, how do I make a choice? Where do I even know, like, where to go?
Yeah. And, it's interesting too, because while there's all these great advancements, sometimes for a business, the capital expenditure doesn't make sense to, move into robotics and things like that. That doesn't mean that they can't still improve their processes and they can't improve their technology stack. So I mean, to your point earlier about controlling what we can control, I mean, look at the objectives, and I would be surprised for someone to come back and say, hey, you know what, we've perfected fulfillment. We don't have anything that we can improve on. Our technology stack's perfect. We don't need any help. And so I've yet to come across a situation like that. So there's always something that we can do to improve.
If anybody out there that's listening feels that way and they're 100% perfect, I want to talk to you. I want to learn. I want to see how you like won the logistics game, because that's impressive.
Yeah. Put me in that conversation as well.
Well, I could sit here and talk to you forever. I'm excited to come out, hang out with you, have more of these conversations. I'm excited for all the things that our two orgs are going to be able to do together. Unfortunately, we don't have unlimited time today. So wrapping up, what kind of closing remarks do you have? Tell us how to get in touch with you as well.
Yeah, feel free to contact me, A McCoy, AMCCOY at eHub.com. Happy to connect, and love to have conversations about how we can help you improve. And we're constantly looking to improve ourselves. So if there's things that we can do to improve, that's interesting for us to discuss as well. So happy to have conversations.
Excellent. We'll make sure to post all of that in the show notes as well. I want to thank everybody again for tuning in. Hopefully, folks got some good takeaways here. Again, every time that I get to talk to Adam or anybody on his team, I'm still learning things, and it's never, a bad conversation. If you're looking to navigate what 2025 brings you, and trust me, I have no idea what 2025 is going to bring us. Or if you're trying to optimize your parcel operations, you can reach out to Adam. You can reach out to me. You can reach me at jeremy.lee. That's jeremy.lee at sifted.com. We'll also drop all of that in the bottom in our show notes. Sifted has tools that can help model potential changes, like I was saying, to your parcel operations. They can help you see around corners and be prepared for the unpredictable, I guess. So give us a shout. Check us out. If you have any questions, we're always happy to have that conversation. Even if we're not a right fit, we might have some insights, or we might know somebody that might be able to help you for what you're trying to achieve.